Hi, and welcome to The Grid. I'm Mike Foreman. I'm joined again, of course, by the Victoria Advocates, Marcus Gutierrez and Ray Castillo. And we're getting down to business here in the playoffs. We've reached the quarterfinals. We have 5 teams left and 4 games this week, 3 on Friday and 1 on Saturday. So we're going to jump right into it. We're going to start with Friday, and of course we have a Class 4 Division II game, the Cuero Gobblers and the Wimberley Texans, and this is another rematch. Really all our games are rematches. This was last year that these teams met in the regional round, and Cuero took a 28-7 win. Wimberley is much improved, and so is Cuero, so this should be a heck of a game. Both teams like to throw the ball, which we'll have to see how the elements affect that since they're playing outside at Bastrop Memorial Stadium. Cuero last week jumped out to a 31-0 lead on Navarro, and then in the fourth quarter, Navarro started to come back a little bit. I think Cuero kind of let down a little bit, and also another factor in that is this was the first time in a long time that Cuero was in a 4-quarter game. So I think the defense actually got a little tired, but they won't be able to afford that this week, right, Marcus?
Yeah, I'd say so. Cuero, they usually dominated the first half and into the third quarter. Not a lot of those starters play in the fourth quarter, but going against that tough Navarro team in the playoffs, when you get this deep, your team's going to be playing 4 quarters. So the Gobblers are going to have to get used to that, but they got over the hump last week, which is big. All those kids wanted that win, but now they go against Wimberley, a team that they defeated last year. I'm pretty sure the Gobblers have a lot of confidence right now, but they got to take care of business. Jordan Whittington, Braylon Taylor, Jaden Williams. We can mention on those names, and they can score real fast, but during this time, this is where defenses really show up, and the Gobblers defense is going to have to step up against the Texans.
Right, and you know that, Ray. And of course, one thing the Gobblers have done pretty well, they've had 7 interceptions in the playoffs, which is a really good number. And I think a key will be for Cuero to be able to get some pressure on Wimberley quarterback JoJo Weeks.
Right, and the Cuero defense comes in averaging only allowing 24 points per game all season. And like you said, against Navarro, they got those points late in the game. But the Gobblers, the 24 points they allowed was the most all season. So, they're looking to bring it against Wimberley. Obviously, like you said, a rematch from last year. And, it's going to be cold. It'll be interesting to see Drew Rimmenschneider, how he, reacts in the weather. But when it's all said and done, like Marcus said, you have the Jordan Whittington, you have the Braden Taylor to be there for you, just to pick up the offense. And I think Coach Travis Reeve, you were at practice, Mike. I know those guys are going to be ready.
Right, and of course, I think they're hoping that at least will be dry. That's really the key for throwing the football, and both teams like to throw the football. So we'll see what happens there. Weather could play a factor. Now, one place where weather won't be a factor will be at the Alamo Dome in San Antonio with Refugio and Mason going at it for the 4th straight year. Boy, these teams, at the beginning of the year, if you'd asked people who will be in the quarterfinals, you probably would have said Refugio and Mason, and here we are. There's been obviously some twists and turns, but both teams have made it. And, Refugio, of course, has been through a lot this year. We've documented that. They've been through the hurricane. They've been through a very serious injury. And they've still managed to play well every week. And Mason, of course, has been outstanding this year. Has only allowed, I believe, a total of 47 points this season. So really should be another good matchup.
Yeah, I got to.
Oh, we just have a comment from our viewers. Alex Melissa Salas says, "Go Tigers." Janet Ware says, "Go Tigers." And Lori Ken Stokely says, "Go Mean Green."
Okay. Yeah, that's right. And we'll be getting to Goliad and Yoakum. Don't worry, they're playing on Saturday, so that's coming up. But right now we're talking about Refugio and Mason. Of course, the Punchers have, we've seen it. They shut out Shiner, and they allowed last week Yorktown to score 7 points. So great defensive team.
Yeah, I got to watch Refugio last week. A lot of big plays. The coach Jason Herring said that they have to limit those big plays. Holland was able to get some deep balls and stuff like that. He wasn't that happy about that. He says that they're going to clean that up. But Refugio put up 70 points that game.
Yeah.
That's very impressive. I don't know how do you stop that kind of offense. And they could have put up 100. Some deep passes. They were dropped and stuff like that. But Refugio offense looks really good right now, and I think that Mason's going to have a challenge. Going against. Jared Kelly and all those receivers. Mike, we talked about it before. They have so many weapons that everyone can do basically the same thing. So it's a really potent offense, but I think that defense is going to have to really settle it up.
Right. The defense, obviously, I guess you agree, right? The key for Refugio is to get the ball back for its offense.
Yeah, definitely. And like Marcus said, Coach Jason Herring can't stress that enough. You look at the playoff run Refugio's having. They've been doing, they've been handling teams, and I would say that Mason could just be the hardest challenge they've had all year. Mm-hmm. But you just look at whether it's last year or this year, I think the Bobcats will be ready. You look at I know it's already been a while, but you look at the way Shiner and Mason played, the 7 points that Shiner allowed, so that just gives you an idea of what a strong defense can do.
Right, and also we have you have to remember too, Refugio, the way it started the season.
Mm-hmm.
After going through the hurricane, they play Goliad. They play Edna, they play Navarro. Those are 3 really good, bigger teams. Mm-hmm. And I really think that helped Refugio now that they get to this stage. And so we move on to our third game Friday. That's the Fall City Beavers and the Burton Panthers will be up at Texas State's Bobcat Stadium in San Marcos. The Beavers led, of course, Ray, as you know, by quarterback Keyshawn Johnson.
Yeah, Keyshawn's having a great season, and I was able to speak with him earlier, and he's ready. He called it a revenge game just because, Burton ended the Beaver season last year. So, those guys are going to be ready. Coach Britt Hart came into Fall City in 2014, and since then the team's always been able to make the playoffs, and they've gotten better every year, but they know that they need to take care of business Friday, and they'd love nothing more to punch a ticket to the state semifinal. And you mentioned it, though, Mike. Keyshawn, he's really done a little bit of everything. You look at his numbers, over 2,000 yards, passing, 26 touchdowns, and rushing for over 1,200. So he's looking to carry that momentum into Friday.
Right, and they have other players. They have, I believe it's Corey and Dylan Juke, the receivers, and then, of course, Andrew Malcolm, the really good running back. So Fall City is more than just Keyshawn, right. And of course Burton's a very talented team. I believe Burton was the favorite in this region going into the year, so it's no surprise. I guess Fall City kind of expected that Burton would be the obstacle to going to the semifinals.
Right, Burton 12-1, Fall City 11-2. I mean, you look at these two teams, competitive-wise, they're right there with each other. So it's going to be an interesting game.
Right, and of course, after all these three teams settle what happens on Friday night, we've got another game on Saturday up at UT Royal Memorial Stadium, Yoakum and Goliad. Of course, this is a game that you knew. I think we kind of knew it would either be Yoakum and Goliad or Yoakum and Hallettsville. And once Goliad defeated Hallettsville, it kind of pointed that direction, although Edna gave Goliad quite a test. But now they've reached a stage. This is the game that I think both teams have kind of been looking towards. I know you went out to both places this week, Marcus. What's the attitude out at Goliad and Yoakum?
Talking to head coach, Yoakum head coach Bo Robinson, every week it's about that offensive line. And we saw last week against Van Vleck that they wore them down, and that's what the old school Bo Robinson team is going to do. He's going to have big trenches. Mm-hmm. He's going to rely on that running game, especially during this time of year. It's cold outside, and if you can't throw the ball, what do you have to do? You have to run the ball. So they're ready. This is a very mature team. A lot of seniors on this team. They know exactly what to do. Like you said, this is a game, a rematch of last year's regional match where Yoakum they beat the Tigers 23-21. Talking with Silas Robinson, he said that was a tough game, and he expects that happening this week. It's going to be another tough game. It's going to come down to the last 2 minutes probably. As far as Goliad, this is a first time for them. They made school history last week, defeating Edna, and now all these young players, they've never been in this kind of spotlight. They've never played at Darrell K. Royal Memorial Stadium. They've never been there, and Coach Nicholson has emphasized that, hey, we're happy to go to a big stadium, but at the end of the day, we have to play. I got to chat with Logan Bland. They're excited they're going there, but they know that this isn't a field trip. This is all about business, and they have a lot of confidence. Both of these teams have 11-game winning streaks in this game. Unfortunately, only one team can advance, so it's going to be a big deal. Another thing, Goliad, they lost their senior receiver Trevor Barr last week. It's going to be tough, and talking with Angel Hernandez and Dontavian Clay, that the rest of the season is for Trevor. Talk with Bobby Nichols. He said Trevor had successful surgery. He's going to be in a boot. He's going to be out for a while, but the doctor's optimistic that he's going to be fine. He's going to be able to walk again. He's going to have to go to extensive rehab, but not having him is going to be tough because he had over about 800 yards and a lot of touchdowns. So, but they still have Logan Bland, who's rushed for 1,500 yards and 31 touchdowns. Still have Dontavian Clay and Rocky Morris. He can do it all. He can do it on offense and defense. They like to spread the ball around evenly to everybody. So it's going to be a tough matchup like it was last year. Only one team can win and advance to the state semifinal.
Right, and I think it's interesting. I mean, Yoakum, both teams, you look at it, they lost their first game. Yoakum lost to Cuero, and of course Goliad lost to Refugio, and of course both Cuero and Refugio are still playing. And I think both of those teams learned from those losses. I mean, it pointed out some areas, and I remember speaking to Bobby Nicholson after the Refugio game where we talked, and he said, I'm really encouraged by what I saw. He said, if our front can come around, we can be a really good football team, and that's what's happened. Actually, the front line has come around, and of course Logan Bland. That's something we really didn't talk about. He was hurt early in the year. He had kind of an unfortunate accident where he fell off a horse into some barbed wire, and he wasn't 100%, but he is now. And boy, you talk about a load to tackle. And meanwhile over in Yoakum, you have of course Jordan, Josh Moore, and all that speed over there, which Yoakum brings, and Goliad's going to have to contend with. So really, a very exciting matchup. One team is going to advance to the semifinals. I think the biggest difference, and you might agree with me on this, is Yoakum has more seniors, and they were in this position last year, which you never know, but that might be a little bit of an advantage for Yoakum, and that's what we have to see is how Goliad's younger players, although juniors, they played a long time, how they handle the big stage like this, because it's different to play, to play at, at Royal Memorial Stadium is a big deal. To play on a Saturday is a big deal. And, they know what's at stake here. So we'll see how they handle it, and that could go a long way towards determining who advances to the semifinal. And before we go, we did want to talk about, you may have noticed in today's paper that we had the UIL released the cutoff numbers for the upcoming realignment and reclassification, which will happen in February. And I don't know if there were any really big surprises, but what we kind of suspected happened. Both Victoria East and Victoria West will be Class 5A Division I in football, and Calhoun will be Division II. And of course, now the intrigue is in February, where are they going to put them? I mean, Victoria could be looking at either they could take them south towards Corpus Christi, or if they could leave them where they are with the Rosenberg schools, because other than Calhoun, only Lamar Consolidated went to Division II. So you've got the potential of a district right there. I don't know, have any of y'all heard anything, what they're kind of expecting or anything?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't get to talk to any players, but just talked with Leonard McGangus and, Coach Richard Whitaker at Calhoun. And, Coach Whitaker, he thought it was, he said it is what it is. And, they're going to deal with it by just continuing to do what they do and play the game. As for McGangus, he says he doesn't really know what to expect until, like you said, February. But for the most part, he's just excited for the new opportunity.
Right.
Yeah, I would think, maybe the Corpus or staying in Houston. I think when you go to Houston, you play those really good athletic teams, and we saw Richmond, Foster, and Angleton in those Rosenberg schools, they have a lot of talent, and when they go against them, they're going. The games come down to the last minute of the game. Now, when you go to Victoria's used to playing in those Corpus districts. Not that saying that Corpus is bad, but the level of competition is different, and so you always want to go against those tough teams that are going to give you a challenge that makes your team better. But I think it maybe can go either way. We'll find out in February. We'll be there, but it's going to be interesting to see. With two young programs in East and West, these next 2 years could be vital, to where they go.
Right, and of course, we don't even need to mention that Foster and Angleton are playing in the quarterfinals.
Yeah.
So that shows you, they're the best two teams in the region in Division One. And we did have a few changes around the area, nothing really major, although Gonzales and Karn City went from Division Two to Division One in their respective classifications, and Van Vleck dropped back down. Van Vleck, which just played Yoakum last week, they won't be with Yoakum anymore. They dropped back down to where they'll be back probably with Tidehaven and East Bernard, I would think. And then I guess the biggest change in the area was Ganado, which went from 2A to 3A. So they'll be in 3A Division Two. I'm assuming they'll go back with Tidehaven as well. We'll just have to wait and see. And I talked to interim Tidehaven AD Johnny Lisak, and he said, really the class doesn't matter. What matters is where they put you, and that's really true. It's like your district is going to determine how tough a road you have. So we won't find that out, of course, until February. But what we will find out is this Friday and Saturday is how many of our teams are going to be playing another week in the semifinals and getting one step closer to AT&T Stadium.
Yep.
And so just stay tuned with us. Follow us on Twitter. And I believe Carolina has some other comments.
Yes, let's see, we've got Angel Hernandez. I'm just going to go down everything.
Goliad linebacker.
Let's go Cuero,
Yeah.
Alex Melissa Salas, she says, Highway 183 is strong. Refugio, Goliad, Cuero. Bobby Pena says, go Mason, go, supporting the punchers from Three Rivers, Texas. Rachel Ann Elizondo says, love my Refugio Bobcats, Alamo Dome bound on Friday. Margaret Rutherford, wishing the Goliad Tigers the best. Chrissy Cassandra says, let's go Goliad, that's my boy, number 7. Charmaine L. Brown, we are Goliad. And Alex Melissa Salas says, Goliad is built for this. Go Tigers. And Margaret Rutherford says some very good comments. Thanks.
Yeah, and it's going to be, we should have some really good games this week because you get to this level, as we talked about, there's 8 teams in each classification left in the state, and these 8 teams are all good. It's like Coach Herring, we were talking about this yesterday, he said at Refugio, he said, any of these 8 teams can win a state championship. He said, now, some may be more talented than others, but the most talented team doesn't always win the state championship. So you get to this level, you're good, you've proven yourself, you've lasted this far, you've gotten rid of the distractions, and from here on out, a lot of times it's like to quote Coach Travis Reeve, it's the team that stays hungry and executes. Those are the 2 keys, really. You got to want it. You got to really want to get to AT&T, and you have to execute because at this level you're playing good competition. And hopefully, like we said, we'll have quite a few teams to talk about again next week, and we'll be back with the grid.